Morning, guys.
Morning.
That's pretty. Let's just say that's weak. Good morning.
Good morning.
That's better. Drake, come up if you would. Have our scripture reading from the morning. It'll be what we read from class. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verses 3 through 8. That's not our text for the day, but certainly can go along with it. So, Drake, whenever you're ready.
God's will is for you to be holy, so stay away from all sexual sin. Then each of you will control his own body and live in holiness and honor, not in lustful passion like the pagans who do not know God and his ways. Never harm or cheat a Christian brother in his matter by violating his wife. The Lord avenges all such sins. We have solemnly warned you before. God has called us to live holy lives, not impure lives. Therefore, anyone who refuses to live by these rules is not disobeying human teaching, but rejecting God who gives his Holy Spirit to you.
Thank you. If you missed it, Jerry reminded me in class that Drake and Katie were chosen for a youth program to go to Washington, D.C. this summer. There was one other kid chosen. I think it was a boy from Pocahontas. So congratulations to our kids. Now, welcome to our last installment of our marriage month. And after this, and everything will be good, then we won't have to ever talk about marriage again, right? If that was the case. The place over at the lake, over at Branson, who has the marriage conference that Brent and I went to the last 2 years, they do once a month. They do a service on a Sunday evening about this subject, and so they keep it at the forefront all along. But this will wrap it up for us now. Just real quick, I want to just remind you of what we've talked about over the past month. We talked about money being the number one cause of divorce people list. And then the number one taboo in our society is we don't talk about money. So there's a bad combination when you put those two things together. I reminded you to always think about marriage as a relationship, not a lifeless contract, a business agreement between two partners, but a relationship between two real people, real children of God, and you look at it as such. We looked about the marriage box that you bring into your marriage. We all come into our marriage with desires, and there's nothing wrong with desires. That's just part of us. But if those desires become expectations, then we have problems. Last week was Brenda's message, Stuck in a Rut. I relayed to you. It's something I've always heard her talk to other couples about, and that's the idea that when you get going down the wrong path and you just keep on it, you build this rut that seems impossible to get out of, and it can seem hopeless. And then lastly, last week I reminded you of the turnaround. When you do finally make the change up here, you know, we're no longer going to do the things we did before, live the way we did before, and you make a change. The change is immediate when you make it up here. But to see results, guys, it takes some time, right? I mean, you didn't get in this situation overnight. It takes more time than overnight to get out of it and see results in your life. So, although the change is immediate when we make it, seeing the results of it can take some time. Now, back to our key slide that I've used for 3 years, where we see God come into the marriage and He's first, but life just starts happening. Things get added on, and the more you go, the more things added on, and it's easy for us to lose our focus. And one of the things we've tried to do here, since we've brought this topic to the forefront at Success, is we want to change this. We're no longer going to act like what we've been doing has been working, because it's not. Because we see Christians with a divorce rate the same of non-Christians, okay? So obviously what we're doing is not working, so we're going to change it. And we can change it, guys, for two reasons. One, if you go with God, you can't go wrong, okay? But number two, people, for the most part, are followers. People, by and large, are followers. And so if we will resolve to set the right example with our marriages, people being by nature followers, I believe will follow that godly example. So I have confidence that we can do this, and we'll start with our own homes, our own marriages, and then we'll go out from there. The example that we're going to set today, as we finish up, is an example of catching the foxes. If you've got your Bibles, turn to Song of Solomon, the love story of the Old Testament. turn to Song of Solomon. We're going to see the example in the Song of Solomon that you and I are going to try to set. One year, Valentine's Day fell on Wednesday night. And I got this great idea at work one Wednesday. I thought me and Brenda will do the Song of Solomon at church that night. And if you've got a modern translation and you look at Song of Solomon, it has the parts broken up in there for you. The King James, it's just all lumped there together. But if you've got a more modern translation, you'll see headings there that say he and she, and then there's a group. The young women of Jerusalem are there as well. Or it may say young man or young woman. And then it may say young women of Jerusalem. So the more modern translations have it broke out. And I thought, this would be great. Brenda and I will stand up and I'll read the man's part. And then she'll read the lady's part. How sweet will that be? And Brenda's like, forget it. Hey, wasn't no way. I'm like, oh really? Okay. I wasn't serious. Yeah, I was too. I thought that'd be a great idea. But no way was she going to go for that. But anyway, so that's just how I got shot down on Valentine's Day one year.
Todd and Charlene will.
Valentine's Day is like in February. Like a note. Song of Solomon, if you're there, the key verse I want you to focus in on is verse 4 of the first chapter. If you've got a translation that breaks it out into headings, you'll see that the last half of verse 4 is the young women of Jerusalem. And that's what I want you to think about this morning for a few minutes. They are there as encouragers. They're the backup singers, if you want to call them that. They're the accountability partners. They're the community of support. And look what they say here in verse 4. They say, how happy we are for you, O King. We praise your love even more than wine. And they're going to do this throughout this love story. And that's what you and I need to do, is encourage other marriages. Praise Todd and Charlene's love. And encourage them. Be good backup singers. Versus a lot of times our backup singing sounds like, you don't need that. Okay? No, we're going to resolve to be good backup singers. And we see that all throughout this love letter. So this is kind of the key. They start out with, oh, how happy we are for you. We praise you guys' love more than wine. In this love story, marriage is depicted as a vineyard. Well, if marriage is a vineyard, we already know who the vine is. Jesus himself, he said, I'm the vine. And then that means you and your spouse are the branches. And then that means that whatever fruit you guys produce, as Jesus talked about the fruit we produce in our lives, that will be the acts of service that people see in your life or don't see in your life. So that will be the fruit. So if marriage is the vineyard, Jesus is the vine, you and your spouse are the branches, and then you produce the fruit of service in your life to God. Is there any work to a vineyard? I don't know. I said that, but I'm going to assume there is, okay? After I said that, I thought, I have no idea. But I'm going to assume, as with any other farm, any other crop, there's work to a vineyard. I'm going to assume these farmers would tell you it probably requires, like all other crops, cultivating and watering and fertilizing and taking care of and protecting. Look what the backup singers say in chapter 2 in verse 15. In verse 15, the backup singers come in again and they say, catch for us the foxes, the little foxes that ruin the vineyards that are in bloom. So the backup singers, the support group, the accountability team comes in here and they tell this young couple, they say, catch the foxes. And notice they said the little foxes before they ruin the vineyard. Because little foxes, guys, little problems are easier to address than big problems. So they say specifically, catch those little foxes before they ruin the vineyard. So if we see the vineyard in the way we've painted it, the marriage is the vineyard, Jesus is the vine, you and your spouse are the branches. You fertilize it, you water it, you protect it from the foxes. We have to teach to protect from the foxes. We have to teach this to our young couples. And now we have to teach it to the old couples, because divorce now has no age limits we're seeing. We have to teach young and old how to catch the foxes, guard their vineyard from the foxes. Let me just ask you a question. Ladies, if you want to be the only person that your husband thinks about when it comes to dating and romance and intimacy? Raise your hand if you want to be the only person your husband thinks about. Okay? Ladies, if it's okay for your husband to think about another woman when it comes to dating and romance and intimacy, let me see your hand. If it's okay for your husband to... Okay, I'm going to call that 0. Okay? I'm going to call that 0. So see, not only does the Bible tell us to protect that marriage, you guys are in it. Y'all are on board with it. I think we're on to something here. I think we're on to something here, guys. So let's press on. See what the Bible says, because we have failed. We have failed to teach this. We have failed to teach the guarding of the marriage, the guarding of the vineyard. And so these little foxes, they become big foxes. Next thing you know, the vineyard is destroyed, and your friends are going, huh, didn't see that coming, right? Because we don't talk about it. Look what Proverbs 4:23 says. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. About 20 times just in the New Testament we're told to guard against something. But one thing we never teach is to guard our marriages, to guard our hearts. We don't teach that. Why? Well, I think for one reason, guys, it's not been an issue like it is now. I think because the teaching is there in the Bible, we've seen it, we're going to see it some more, it's not been an issue like it is now. I think back to, you remember when Paul in 1 Corinthians 7, he was talking about the relationships and the marriages, and he started out by saying, because of this present crisis, remember that? And then he went on to say, if you're married, don't seek a divorce. If you're divorced, he said, don't seek a marriage. But he started out by saying, because of this present crisis, and we think that present crisis was sexual sin there in Corinth, was really rampant. And so Paul was saying, because of this crisis, let's break this cycle. Let's put a halt on what's going on now. We got to break this cycle, guys. I think we're in the same situation today. I think we can say the same thing today. Because of this present crisis, we need to do some things. What crisis do we have? You talk about catching some little foxes. Huh? You talk about catching some foxes. Now, it's been an issue, guys, as far back as men and women have worked together outside the home. It's been a problem, okay? But with the explosion of the internet and technology within the last 20 years, it has grown exponentially to the point we're at today, to the point where the last thing I read was 1 in every 3 divorces have something to do with a social media influence. Yeah, I think because of this present crisis, we need to address this. You think, well, what's the big deal? It just popped up there. I hadn't seen him since high school, or I hadn't heard from that girl since college, and we're just catching up. There's nothing wrong with talking, and that's the way it all starts out. And you're starting out in the truth. But let's think about it like this, guys. When Jax goes to bed at night, if I went in there and give him a box of these matches, I said, son, sleep tight. Here's a little something extra. Strike all these matches before you go to sleep. How cool would that be, Jax?
I'm not gonna die.
That'd be cool. I love the smell of a struck match, for one thing. Yeah, I'm a weirdo. But how cool would that be? I'd light the bedroom up. He could get on the covers. And you know, he might strike this whole box of matches and never have an issue, right? And then he might get burned, right? Or he might burn the house down and lose it all. So because of that, the rule is we don't play with matches. Because of that can come from it, the rule is we don't play with matches, right? But the world says, oh, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with looking as long as you don't touch. I've heard Christians say, with a straight face. You can look but not lust. Well, I need to know where the line is there. You know, I need some clarification on that definition. You can look but don't lust. It's okay to flirt and have coarse jokes with the opposite sex, as long as you don't act out on it. I mean, I've heard this kind of stuff, guys, and this teaching comes right from the world. This is not an example that we get from the Bible. This is absolutely wrong teaching. We're not left without guidance in this area, guys. We have it. Let's see, how much flirting did Paul say was acceptable? Well, in Ephesians 5, if you remember, on down in this chapter, we looked at this 2 or 3 weeks ago, he gave us specifically some roles for husbands and wives, and we had a sermon about it. But look what he said up at the first of Ephesians 5 as he started out. He said, "But among you there must not even be a hint of sexual immorality." I love the NIV, the way it phrases that. Other translations will say no. There must be no. But I love the way that NIV phrases that. Let there not be a hint. Because a hint is usually the way it starts. Let there not be a hint of sexual immorality. Let me explain something to you. When it comes to love, we've got one word. Right? We got one word. Love. I love Brenda. I love deviled eggs. Right? That's it. That's just how our language is. Okay? If I had to choose between Brenda and deviled eggs, do they have paprika on them? I mean, no. The Greeks use 3 words for love. At least 3. 3 words for love. There's agape love. That's for God so loved the world. That's a selfless love. That's a love of service. That's a love of choice. That's how I make a decision to love my neighbor, not because we have anything emotional, but because God was good to me, I'm good to my neighbor. That's agape love. There's philia. Philia is the brotherly love. That's what I have. It's a little deeper. It has some emotion to it. It's what I have for each one of you guys. Is philia, brotherly love. But then there's eros. Oh, eros. That sounds like something, eh? That's where we get the word erotic from that Greek word, eros. So you understand what the implication of that. Do you know why eros is not mentioned in the New Testament? Do you know why eros is not taught in the New Testament? Because there's nothing to teach. God has given you that internally as a gift for your spouse. You're given that. All we're told about in the New Testament is be careful with it. Control it. Let there not be a hint of it if it's out of place. That's what we're told about. You don't have to be taught. We have to be taught to control it. So here's the problem. When we share eros with somebody else that's not our spouse, whether it's verbally, whether it's text or Facebook or just through body language or on any emotional level, and least of all physically. When we share eros with somebody else, we rob our spouse of what's theirs. We rob our spouse of what has been preserved for them. You ain't going to hear this stuff on TV, guys. Let me tell you like this. When you snack all day at work, you're not hungry when you get home. Drake took a FFA trip the other day somewhere, and they eat at Lambert's when they come back through in the middle of the afternoon. So what's the big boy do at Lambert's? Bring the rolls on, keep throwing them. So he ate no telling how many rolls and butter, knowing that at home that night we had fried squirrel, biscuits and gravy, fried potatoes. Yeah, buddy. So what happened? Drake gets home and he's full. He has gorged himself, and he just can't hardly make himself eat the fried squirrel. He eats a couple of pieces of it just to say he did, but he's just not really enjoying it. It's nothing like it would have been if he would have been without food all day and he come home to fried potatoes and biscuits and gravy. How good would that meal have been then? It would have been awesome. It would have been awesome. You know, guys, when you're on a diet, and you're making choices not to have snacks, and you're looking at me going, fat boy, you're out of your league now. I mean, you have no idea what you're talking about. No, I don't have much, but the times I tried diet, I know exactly. When you're making choices not to have snacks, how much better is a good meal then? Oh, it's awesome. It's awesome. But if you're snacking all day, that meal is just not as tasty. And sometimes if you force it down, it even kind of makes you sick. Because you're just not hungry. It just doesn't satisfy. Now, am I comparing Brenda to fried squirrel?
Yes.
Maybe. But get my point, guys. I'm having to speak in parables for these little kids. I want you to understand what I'm talking about and how important it is. That is reserved for your spouse no matter how little you think it is. You're snacking. If there's even a hint of something out of line. So how do we deal with the opposite sex then if we're married? How do we know? Well, again, guys, it's not because we're left without instruction. We're left with simple, basic instructions. Paul told Timothy, he started out just prior to this saying, older men, he said, I want you to respect them as you would father. And then he says, treat younger men as brothers. He said, treat older women as mothers and younger women as sisters with absolute purity. The way we interact with others is just like this. This is the way we think about it, and this is the way we act it out when we interact with them. Just like this, as if they're older than us, just as if they're our mothers. If they're our age and younger, just as if they are our sisters. So it's not that we're left without instructions. We have instructions. It's just applying it to our lives. And oh my goodness, what a difference it would make. I think about this because I talk to so many people, and I try to go out of my way to never let there be a hint of anything, because I don't want that. So catch the foxes while they're little. If you catch them when they're little, they're not hard. If you let them get big, you can very well lose the vineyard. And be good backup singers. Right? Let's be good backup singers. And I think we do a good job of that here at Success. But let's be good backup singers for the other marriages around us and celebrate them. I thought about how I wanted to end this lesson. And this is something I've used before, but something I really like. When you look at a rope, it's a good picture of two people interwound with one another, and it shows the strength and the unity and the togetherness of husband and wife as they are one, as the Bible instructs us. But what's the problem with that picture, guys? Here's the problem. A rope is not 2 strands. A rope is 3 strands. And although their one strand really goes unnoticed, that 3rd strand is critical to make that into a braid and to make that something that's strong and will hold together. And that 3rd strand, as you know, is God. Is God. And so what I've told you all month, guys, we're not looking for 12-step programs and a good feeling to make marriages work. Everything I've said and we've talked about in the last month assumes that God leads in your life and in your spouse's life. That's what we're talking about. Last thing. Young people, listen. Character trumps chemistry. Hear me? Character over chemistry when it comes to finding a mate. But teenagers are like, oh, well, he gives me chill bumps. Honey, he's also going to give you worry lines when you're staying up at night wondering is he going to come home or not. Forget the bad boys that are cool. Character. Boys of character usually become men of character. Character over chemistry. That chemistry that you think is such a big deal. Oh, God's just telling me I'm in love. I feel it. let me just be as blunt as I'm going to be today. Your dog falls in love like that every once in a while with the neighbor's dog. And 3 days later, he's over it. Kids, now, it's funny. It is funny, but I'm telling you the truth. That is the same way. Chemistry, lust is the word for that. It's the same way, guys. But our kids, we mistake that for the real thing. And oh, it feels so strong, and it is a strong feeling. It's a gift God has given us to be shared with our spouse. It is a strong feeling, and so we mistake that for love. We mistake that for God leading us to someone. Character over chemistry. Guys, make a decision. That's why arranged marriages work so well in many parts of the world. These families put two good kids together, and guess what? They make good decisions, and they fall in love and have a successful life together. Character over chemistry. Now, for you married couples, live in the light. Live completely in the light. No secrets. No secrets from your spouse. No secrets. At any time, be able, with a clear conscience, to hand this to your mate and say, see if you can find that text from old so-and-so in there I'm looking for, with no fear of them anything else being wrong in there. Why? Because you live completely in the light. That's not just good advice. That's what Jesus said to do. Walk in the light. John said that about him. Walk in the light as he is in the light, and then the sins are covered. Do that way with your spouse. Live in the light. Character over chemistry. If we can help anybody this morning, if God's not leading your life,